This one's on. Good. All right. Well, welcome everybody to this session on becoming visually decisive in echo. I am your guest moderator. My name is Jordan Strum. I'm an associate director of the Echo Lab and director of echocardiographic research at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center and section head for cardiovascular imaging research at the Richard A. and Susan Smith Center for Outcomes Research in Evaluation. So I have a very distinguished panel here to be able to talk about the role of contrast and particularly the use of contrast and utilization with your labs. And the hope is that this is going to be an interactive session that we can really discuss some of your really important points about how do we actually use contrast and what are the best ways to be able to use contrast and increase the utilization within your laboratory to appropriate levels. So with that, I wanted to just mention a couple of things. So this is recall that you can use this code to be able to actually submit questions, and you can go to this website and submit questions that appear up here, and we'll try to address as many of them as we can. And just to thank our sponsor, Bracco Diagnostics is the U.S. division for the International Bracco Group, which does offer comprehensive contrast solutions and has a long-standing commitment to customer quality and support in diagnostic sonography. So we will discuss first which panelist institution performs the highest volume of cases with the lowest percentage of repeats due to insufficient information or quality. With that, I'd like to sort of introduce our panel. Jessica Stout is Technical Director of the Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center Echo Lab. Ian Crandall is Education and Quality Coordinator for Yale New Haven Healthcare. Cassandra Harrison is Clinical Coordinator at Heart Center for Memorial Hermann. And Kevin Darville is Supervisor for University Medical Center. So we are really privileged to be able to discuss with you today, I think, a number of appropriate uses for this important technology. And so with that, wanted to turn this over to the group. Yeah, okay.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Jess Stout, Technical Director at Beth Israel Deaconess Hospital in Boston. So we have 5 locations just on our main campus that we have sonographers out. Well, 4, soon to be 5. We have a brand new inpatient building that's opening in March of 2023. So for our institution, workflow is incredibly important. And it's interesting, and I think you'll hear maybe a little bit of variety of workflow for all the panelists today. And I recently saw my mom. I went down to see her, and I was thinking about this presentation. I was thinking about workflow, and we went out to lunch when I arrived. My mom's in her 70s with her, and I went with her and her brother, and we went to like this place where you have like your make your own bowls, right? And which is great for like people that understand how to do that, but it was like the most horrendously embarrassing thing ever, as my mom and her brother are all standing there in line. Well, wait, I picked 2 things. Can I have 3? Can I have this? Wait, I want sauce. It was terrible. So it's funny how workflow will work in some cases for some people and not for other institutions. So I hope that we can give you a good a broad view here today. So when I started at Beth Israel in January of 2021, our usage of contrast was only about 2%. And that was because workflow was incredibly difficult. So the good thing is that sonographers would always start with an apical view, so they could immediately identify if we did need contrast. But then there's all these other steps that we were running into where we were getting delays. So the sonographer would have to contact IV therapy if it was if it was not an inpatient, and then contact the fellow to inject. And one fellow had to run between 4 campuses or 4 locations on our main campus to just inject contrast for the sonographers. And it was kind of a disservice to the fellow too, because they're a non-invasive cardiac fellow. They should be spending their time scanning, not running around injecting contrast. So this really gave sonographers, they had a really hard time for time. Like, it would take just so much time to try to get contrast done. So, and for our fellows, sometimes they're deciding, like, I have a clinical matter, this here we have, he has to give CPR on this dummy, or, go help the girls in the echo lab. So it was a really tough workflow. So the good thing was they did have a standard order in place. So all of our echo orders do say echo with contrast so that the sonographers can make the decision to inject or not. So I think that's a really important thing for all hospitals to have. And so what we did, and what I did with the help of Jordy, is we adjusted our workflow so that sonographers could then inject. And sonographers were 100% on board with that. They could not wait to start injecting. And it takes out that one step where you're relying on the fellow to run around and inject for you. So I'm gonna come back to this in just one second. I think for me as a manager and as a sonographer, it's really important that our sonographers were comfortable injecting and comfortable with what to do in the event of an adverse reaction. And so I cannot express enough how important it is to have the sonographers adequately trained and comfortable. Because if they're more comfortable, they're going to use it more. Anything that can make them more comfortable, increase the workflow, will increase utilization tenfold. So we came up with policies and competencies where we had all of our sonographers trained, and our utilization of echo increased dramatically when we did that. But part of the training was allergy kits and preparedness for the sonographers. So we created allergy kits for all of our locations, and also a very specific workflow for the sonographers. So there's no question, or there should be no question, what to do when there's a reaction. And so on the right here, we have that little flow sheet in every one of our rooms, so that sometimes in the heat of the moment, you get nervous if someone's having a reaction, you kind of forget what to do. It's very clearly outlined what to do if there's any type of reaction. On the left is just our allergy kit contents and what we have in those. And it's interesting because it actually took one adverse reaction for us to look at our policies and our protocol. We did not initially see how important it was to have the allergy kit. And so we had one reaction where we didn't have Benadryl as quickly as we had liked. And sometimes it takes learning moments like that to realize what your deficiencies are and grow and learn from them. So after that, we did get these kits for every single lab. So if everybody wants to respond, anybody has the app, is everyone in your lab familiar with their role during a patient hypersensitivity event? And does your lab policy entail a swift, effective response? Just a minute.
We'll just give people a minute.
Yeah, so I think it's just really important to understand your policy and just make sure everybody is aware and understands their role when it comes to any adverse reaction. So when we changed our workflow and had the sonographers injecting, we actually saw the increase of Lumason go up from 2% in January 2021 to over 24% now, and it's directly correlated to changing that workflow and having sonographers inject and no longer relying on our fellows to inject. And I think future goals for us, and we just started this, is having the sonographers start placing all IVs, and I think this really needs to become kind of the standard across the board. I did it in my old hospital. We had this implemented about 8 years ago, where I was prior. And the sonographers were incredibly hesitant at first, but I have to say, they've all told me how grateful they are that they have that skill set now, and how it really helps them day to day, because it's one less hurdle to have to deal with when you have an outpatient that needs Lumason. So that's something that we're working on now, and we hope to have implemented in the next couple months as well. Okay.
Great. Thank you so much. And just showing here, there's a sonographer training resource hub on the International Contrast Ultrasound website that has a number of resources and availability here to be able to find resources if you're interested in training your sonographers on use. Both the AAC as well as the SDMS and professional societies do support the use of sonographers to be able to give echo contrast. And what's more, I think you mentioned, really importantly, there are a number of things that you can really do to be able to increase the utilization in your lab. One of the things is starting with those apical views so that you know what the quality is of the images, and right at the outset, you know whether or not you're going to need contrast right away. 2 is empowering your sonographers, having that standing order so that you know whether or not, so that when the decision is made to be able to implement contrast, that you have that availability, and again, empower the staff who are doing this to be able to actually administer it. And third is to have champions within your own institution. This doesn't happen, change doesn't happen overnight. You need to have champions like Jess and otherwise to really understand where are the gaps in the levels of care. In the cases like the issue of the allergy kits, if you look at your code cart may not have the supplies, for instance, that would be needed for an allergic reaction. Allergic reactions in general with contrast we know are rare. About happen in about 1 in 10,000 cases, which is about the safest of all contrast agents that exist. So, but they do happen, and it's important to be prepared for it, and it's important for sonographers to be prepared and understand what's necessary. So just a quick question, then we'll move on to the next presentation, which is, Jess, there are a number of sonographers who may feel, I don't really feel comfortable with this. I don't feel comfortable with the training. I don't feel comfortable about contrast. We know that schools in general, sonography schools, don't necessarily always teach contrast up front. They don't have the resources to be able to do that, and that creates a challenge when you come to the job level where you've come from an institution which may not do this. How do you change the culture from that perspective? Or what means do you be able to do to be able to discuss with sonographers and say, this is really important, this is part of our care, 10 to 20% of all echoes we know are suboptimal. How do we really get those suboptimal echoes to a diagnostic image quality so that we can make the effective diagnoses for our patients?
Yeah, I think that there's a few different ways we had to do that, and I found that with my new students that come in, I help train them, and so the highest utilizers of contrast are actually my brand new sonographers right out of school, because they trained under me, so they know my expectations. And I think that was a challenge too. We have a lot of senior sonographers that were just not utilizing contrast as much as they should have, and I think just setting that expectation from my perspective as technical director, that this is how we need to improve the quality in the lab, and that's what I expect here. But also giving them the tools to do it, and the appropriate training. And I also do now quality conferences monthly, where I pull cases that I feel like could have benefited from contrast, among other things. I pull a lot of cases where there were issues or things that I want to discuss. So we do those monthly, and then I also try to do like an overview of sonographer studies. So I pull a few studies every month or two of the sonographers and kind of do like a quick review with them. And one of the questions on there is, was contrast used, or should contrast have been used? And I just think giving that feedback to sonographers is really important as well. And again, just setting that expectation. So yeah.
One of the things that we've done at our health system at Yale New Haven is on our PAC system, there's actually a checklist that sonographers are required to fill out every echo, which says which imaging agent was used, why it was used, and most importantly, why was it not used? and that we actually have a drop-down menu with 5 items or so listed. So we really put the emphasis on the sonographer to own it. So if they do not use imaging agent and it's indicated, they will be sent back upstairs to redo the images.
It's a good point, and we actually have also in our reporting system, we have a place where the physicians can also say feedback for the sonographers and if Lumason should have been used, and I run that monthly as well and follow up with any that the physicians have indicated that we should have used Lumason on. So that's a really helpful tool for us as well.
Fantastic. Well, turn it over to Ian Crandall from Yale New Haven Hospital for our next presentation.
All right, thank you everyone for coming. Appreciate it, and I hope everyone's having a nice lunch. As Jordy said, my name's Ian Crandall. I work at Yale New Haven Health System in Connecticut. And some of the things that I'm going to be talking about today are the challenges that I've faced within my own health system, implementing standardization across multiple sites. So I'm just going to share with you my journey, some of the headaches that I've encountered, am encountering, and what I think is best to do to resolve those. And again, thanks for inviting me to the ASC. I'm really excited. I haven't been here in 2 years due to the pandemic, so I'm really excited to be joining today. So I'm going to start talking about these 2 delivery networks in my health system. On the left, you can see the main campus, which is called the York Street campus, simply due to the name, the street that it resides on. This is the campus that I spent the majority of my career on, where I developed a lot of my skills from basic 2D optimization to more advanced techniques such as valvular 3D and valve sizing. Those are really kind of my love of echo is interventional. On the right is St. Raphael's campus, where my office is currently, and it's where I spend the majority of my time. However, fortunately, this St. Raphael's campus is actually undergoing renovation, and excitingly, the sonographers will be moving into a brand new top-level line lab, hopefully by the end of the fall. And these are the 2 main sites of the Yale New Haven Health System that I call my home base. And the York Street campus is about twice the size of St. Raphael's. And between the 2 campuses, we can take care of about 2,000 beds for patients between the 2 campuses. So on this map, you can see the York Street campus and St. Raphael's campus, represented by the stars. And I wanted to show really how close these big institutions are. And because I travel between them, fortunately, the distance between these 2 really is not far. And on some days, I might travel between the campuses multiple times, 5 at a time. So it makes the shuttle a really good choice. But for a quicker mode of transportation, I actually ride my skateboard between the 2. And it cuts it down to 4 minutes, so it's excellent. So in addition to the 2 main campuses, there's a Bridgeport Hospital campus, which is another large teaching institution with one of the country's top burn units. On the right is one of our smaller community hospitals, which is Lawrence Memorial. And these are some of the other sites that I visit on a regular basis. And with my current role of standardization across the system, I try to visit at least 1 site minimum per week, if not 2. This map represents the Connecticut coastline, as you can see, and I have it up here so you can really I can share with you where the delivery networks are across Connecticut. So I've already introduced you to these 2 campuses, the York Street and St. Raphael's campus. And now I want to share with you the other hospitals. And then, of course, we can't forget about our outpatient sites. On the far right over here, you can see this star that's located in Rhode Island. It's not a mistake, but we actually have a smaller community hospital there that was owned by another delivery network prior to Yale acquiring this hospital. So at initial glance, the number of delivery networks may appear really overwhelming to the people in the crowd. But between all of the sites I visit within my scope, I'm responsible for overseeing about 100 sonographers in relation to education and quality. So let's see, on one day, if I travel from Rhode Island to Greenwich, it's about 112 miles. I don't do that daily. I like to take the train from New Haven, Connecticut to Greenwich, and I like to travel smart and not hard there. So with a system that's really large and 100 sonographers, we certainly have encountered many of the issues you're going to hear about today. And here in this bowl, you can see 3 common hurdles that one might encounter when implementing any form of standardization in your health system. So let's just go over a few of them. These 3 are standing orders, attending permission in pharmacy could be some issues. So what are some other common issues? Sonographer injection, physician buy-in. We know Jordy loves imaging agent, right? So if Jessica performs an echo without it, he's going to support her to go up and do it. That's really, really nice and sometimes rare to find in an institution. Then we have physician leadership. Physician leadership will help you streamline implementing standardization of imaging agent in your health system. And lastly, administration. Currently in my role, I work with leadership, and this is new to me, and it's really nice to actually see this side of the healthcare. So when I began my echo career at Yale, I can truthfully say that all of these common issues were actually sorted out and implemented about 5 years prior to me starting. And that was really due to the hard work of the Echo Lab director at the time, Dr. Lisa Soon-Yang. So remember, I started at the York Street campus, which is just one delivery network. In my current position for system quality, I have realized that a system really is not necessarily as strong as its base or mothership. So whenever starting a new role, for everyone in the crowd for standardization, it's always important to step back and observe the actual workflow of that delivery network. I can't just go in and say, you need to fix this and this and that, without really understanding the underlying reason why this is occurring and finding the correct approach to address those issues. What I've learned from visiting different delivery networks is that all of these common issues contribute to image quality. In order to address image quality issues, you really need to address the other contributing factors that may be causing it, which may or may not be all of the things that we see in the bowl. So now we're going to have a little bit of audience participation. Do you believe workflow efficiency can be improved by your sonographer starting IVs? Be honest. This is really interesting. So in my health system at Yale, I agree with these results. Yes, but sonographers are reluctant, and why? Because it could be something that is new to them, starting an IV. At the time, at some campuses across my network, the managers are nurses, and sometimes they don't feel comfortable letting a sonographer start IVs. So I'm going to go into a little bit of what I do at my institution to help mitigate this issue. So my current position is something that's really new for the health system, and there was nothing there prior for me to really mold this role after. But the one thing I fell back on was, what would I want if I was the sonographer either receiving education or feedback about quality? And that's really the foundation to my approach in building this role. The one thing I noticed was to really implement quality is not something, in my opinion, that should just be done by doing presentations and group conferences. I really feel that it is important to use more one-on-one approach to really be effective. So this picture on the right, this is an example of one of the teams that I've kind of created as a go-to group for other sonographers to help with administration of imaging agent, 3D, strain, anything that they need. That's clearly me on with the tie-dye lead there. And now I'm going to talk to you actually about one of my more urgent needs at the moment to train sonographers in, and it's interventional. But so such as TAVR, Apollo, Watchman's, and most importantly, mitral clip at the current moment. And as anyone in the audience knows, for mitral clip, you're basically living in 3D the entire time while the device is being implanted. So to accomplish this, the sonographer really needs a great deal of expertise to do the exam successfully. And I want to remind the audience that I think it is important that a system educator needs to be facile in all the aspects of transthoracic, transesophageal stress echo, TEE, and in this case, interventional. And it's essential to be able to really perform the role as educator successfully for a system as large as mine. And here are just some images of myself working with the fellows and attendings to train them on 3D needed for the mitral clip. At my health system, it's really custom to have sonographers performing all aspects of 3D acquisition, just short of holding the TE probe. And I've met some individuals across the conference that this is actually shocking to them. So it's really nice to see the different sides across the country. This is where we perform the such procedures. It looks like we have all of this room for activities, but really one of the challenges that I'm facing currently is the other education that's occurring at the same time. So not only am I responsible for training sonographers, the attending is also responsible for training their fellows. So that's already 4 people in a really small area, and that really limits the area for what is required for 3D knobology and training for this. I'm pretty tall, so this C-arm that you see, whoever, depending on who's driving it, the interventionalist, you need to watch out. So that's one of the biggest things that I like to avoid in that room, is getting hit by the C-arm. As I stated before, I'm a firm believer. If I'm the one asking the sonographers for quality and for education, I should really be able to do all of these things myself. So I really find it essential for the educator to be able to pop in there and get the same images that I'm asking for of the sonographer. So that's just me grabbing some pictures after a TAVR procedure. So audience participation here, what's really the issue in getting sonographers the authorization to gain access? Cassandra, you see number A there. Nursing staff is holding on to territory. Cassandra's a nurse, and she's going to be speaking shortly.
I have a target now.
Mm-hmm.
Sonographers don't want to be, all right. This is a challenge. Lab manager isn't motivated. So it seems like the biggest answer is sonographers don't want to do it, right? So I'm going to talk about the challenges that I faced with that. Moving back into quality, the number one item that I noticed was really poor ergonomics system-wide and how that had a direct impact on imaging. So starting with getting the entire system, these ergonomic bricks, it's actually a weird accomplishment for me if you look at the big picture, just getting blue bricks, ergonomic bricks for the sonographers. Another one is to implement IV insertion for all sonographers system-wide, and this is something that I realized that I need to start somewhere, and you can't have everyone do this right off the bat. So as you can see, I have a nice person, Lewis here, that's letting me place an IV on him, and we have our nurse Sheila behind me, who's you might see in just a second, that's guiding me through the process. So we have one-on-one training to help place these IVs. There she is. So, and the big smile, see? So this is really helpful for us in our institution. We have 3 trained nurses for Echo on the York Street campus, and then we have them possibly rotate to other campuses as well. But in the meantime, especially in outpatient, starting IVs for sonographers is a huge, huge help, especially if, let's say, Jessica is doing some outpatient echoes and she's free, she's going to be able to pop in and help out if the nurses are busy with TE or stress. And then the other thing that I've worked on is this is finally a simple lack of communication was really an additional factor for poor image quality. So I worked on getting communication devices called mobile heartbeat that is currently system-wide. This means that a sonographer at Westerly Hospital in Rhode Island can communicate with a sonographer on the York Street campus. And so you might ask, why not just use your own cell phones? Well, first, sonographers are encouraged from not being on their cell phone. But secondly, due to COVID, we found that sonographers did not want to pull out their phone and send messages. So I've implemented this, and this has been really successful thus far. Another reason for a decrease in image quality is foreshortening, and this is commonly caused by echoes being done on patients that do not have dropout beds. At many delivery networks, I had to work with the managers, and I'm still currently working with managers to acquire dropout beds, which allows the sonographer to move more lateral without the barrier of the bed there. Would you be interested in a method of gamification for improving quality initiatives? So to just explain that, would you be interested in having a resource, an online resource, where sonographers could go and participate and learn and be educated for imaging agent and imaging agent use? 100% yes. Ooh, nice. All right. So I'm going to talk briefly about something in just a few minutes that I think that everyone will enjoy. So for education purposes, we still have case review, but some are in person, mostly by Zoom now. But this is one really important factor, that we are now reaching multiple delivery networks during these calls. So to put it in perspective, I'm really proud of this because it can be up to 50 plus sonographers on one Zoom call to really emphasize standardization across the health system. More recently, I've come across a really interesting tool I'm happy to share with everyone, and I've been utilizing it a lot to help me with education, even when I don't have a PAC system with me. I can be on the floor on my telephone. So this is a website called Visually Decisive, and it's offered by Bracco, and it's meant for sonographers that has just images in interesting cases and with the use of imaging agent. The way I utilize this website is I'm able to talk to sonographers whether they're new or they're in need of remediation. I'm able to pull up cases on the fly and really review them and determine their thoughts on why imaging agent should or should not be used. The dog's trying to talk over me here. So once you log into the website, you're able to click on a case. On the top left, you can see case 54. And the reason why I chose this case to show all of you is that this is a case that I believe newer sonographers, especially in my health system, would most likely not use imaging agent. They may pass it off and say it's okay. Although I know that it's indicated on these images, I really need to understand why they believe imaging agent is not needed. So clearly we can see the use of imaging agent, that there is a large wall motion abnormality here that was not identifiable on the previous slide. What I really enjoy about this website is that it gives you everything you need to really educate and prove your point in the need for imaging agent. And I don't need to sort through pictures and pictures, multiple studies in the PAC system to show the important educational point here. It's already done for me. And then you might say, wow, those images would look really good if they had before and after side by side. Well, wouldn't you know it? They're here for you. So the importance of this slide is really to show the side-by-side differences to that sonographer that truly believes they do not need to use imaging agent. I'm able to show them in this case it was needed and why it was needed. This is a teaching method that is new. I have not seen this anywhere. And it's something that's offered on this website, and this is called unenhanced and enhanced overlay views. And you can see the 2D images with the imaging agent, images displayed as overlays just by clicking and dragging the arrows. And this is really an additional teaching tool that allows you to really delve further and identify issues that the sonographer may be having difficulty to comprehend. And I want to end with something that I have learned throughout my challenges thus far, and it's simply that you cannot succeed alone. Additionally, be curious. Don't be afraid to ask those hard questions simply because you're nervous. Have a sense of being, look introspectively, and be honest with yourself and what you see. Surround yourself with others that are like-minded, yet still challenge yourself to be uncomfortable. And create partnerships depending on the challenges you're having in your health system. And it really does not hurt to have those. And I'd like to end with a quote. Don't ask yourself what your organization should be doing for you, but ask yourself what you can be doing to improve your organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. That was fantastic. So I think we only have time for one question at this point in time, but I wanted to come back to the issue of the sonographers placing IVs and the reticence that exists there. We know that nationally, only about 18% of sonography schools, there was a recent survey within the last couple of years, Sharon Mulvey and otherwise, published this within JACE, that only about 18% of sonographer schools offer training on IVs. And so is one of the reasons that we're a little bit less confident about placing IVs, that the training doesn't necessarily exist in all places, and because, quite frankly, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. We don't have the resources at the clinical sites to be able to train people, and if you don't have those resources, then people don't learn it, and they get to practice and they don't have it. But that's an critically important skill. We know that contrast use is higher in inpatients than outpatients. We know that, of course, there's a lot of benefits to its decreasing struggle time, for instance, and if you have it and you know how to place an IV on the spot, you don't have to wait 45 minutes for a sonographer, for an IV nurse to come and place an IV. We are working through the International Contrast Ultrasound Society to be able to provide a pipeline for IV training that can be implemented after you exit training. We're also working on implementing a specific survey that will be going out to SDMS accredited schools to look at how they have encountered this barrier and what are the barriers there. But I wanted to come back and ask both of you, how do you have this conversation with sonographers, and how do you overcome that reticence? What do you really think are the important things that would drive utilization of IVs and then subsequently contrast?
So in my role with across the health system, not many sonographers really would like to place IVs. It's uncomfortable for them, and one thing that I've found that is helpful is putting myself in the fire. So I would be the first one to learn how to put IVs in, be a super user, and show the benefit across the system. Someone has to take the role and run with it and have the support of the Echo Lab director. That's something that has really helped the Yale New Haven health system.
Yeah, and I'll just add for those folks that mentioned there's administrative pushback for sonographers placing IVs. I think one of our points when we were pushing for it is there are a lot of other roles in hospitals, at least in our institution, where people other than nurses are putting in IVs. MRI, all of the MRI techs do it. In nuclear med, all of the nuclear med folks do it. In the stress lab, a couple of the stress exercise physiologists do it. So that was really important to show to the administration, like we're not asking for something that's out of the realm here. This is already happening in the institution. We're just trying to adapt it over to the sonographers as well.
It's really important, and in fact, actually, that's relevant as well to look at precedents for contrast utilization as well. When we pursued that and had discussions with the administration, our institution, there was precedents for ophthalmology technologists using Timolol eye drops. And so if there was a framework from which we could do that, and I can tell you there are not particular state regulations around this in multiple states. So if there's not a framework, look at existing precedents that exist to be able to guide the use within your administration. So that's great. So I just wanted to end our session by saying, a lot of these resources are really available. As you can see, we have increasingly dispersed Echo Labs, and so it's really important that to be able to work as a group and work as a team to be able to improve contrast utilization in our labs. There's enormous wealth of data suggesting that contrast is both cost-effective, but also improves image quality and potentially even downstream utilization. So I think there's a lot of benefits. We have to really empower our sites and make it easy for sites to be able to use. So think about the workflow. Think about what ways that you can ease that within your workflow to be able to improve the utilization overall. And with that, thank you very much to our panelists for attending, and thank you very much for the audience for being here. Have a good rest of the conference.
Thank you, guys.